Dollar. Dirt and money, no soul. Had to go and get it, ain't no time to kick it. Got a stack and flip for my foes. Dollar. Please tell me you can hear me. Don't turn your back and don't neglect me. Just let me know if you need me. Dollar. Let me watch out for my partners. Keep my money long, get my team strong. Let me run away from my problems.
Yup, what's good, original crew, man? We're back. Hey, we're back on the channel, man. We got chilling scares in the building. Are you finna take notes?
Ah, we don't take notes. I just want to write.
What you want to write?
Yeah.
All right, I give us another body count tonight for you to write.
Was that in the plan? Was that on the agenda?
Yeah, that was already in the plans.
I'm like, I don't want to write that bad.
Well, you asked for it, so you know, I just want to be able to deliver what you asked for. You said you want to write,
Thank you.
We're going to make sure that happens for you.
Thank you.
Hey, with that being said, before we get into it, make sure y'all check out the links in the description box.
Down below.
You already know where to go if you want to first support. All you got to do is check out down below. Also, if you enjoyed today's video,
like it with a thumbs up.
Hey, man, today's video, we got 6 most disturbing moments caught on live TV footage. You ready, CC? Mm-hmm. Let's go.
On the 30th of June 2025, a reporter named Linildo Frazão went live from the Miriam River in Brazil to cover a tragic incident that happened there just a day earlier. In the early hours of June 29, a group of teenagers had decided to go for a swim in the river. Unfortunately, they underestimated its depth, resulting in the disappearance of 13-year-old Raíssa Fernandes. Seconds after entering the water, her friends watched her dip beneath the surface, and that was the last time anyone saw her alive. Divers looked for her underwater, while rescuers scoured the riverbank, hoping she might have washed ashore somewhere. But even after hours of searching, Raíssa was nowhere to be found. Linildo intended to use this broadcast as an opportunity to educate viewers on the dangers of river currents and general river safety, not knowing that he was about to solve the mystery of Raíssa's disappearance on live TV. He took off his shoes and started slowly walking into the river, while talking about the sudden increase in depth and how dangerous it can be for inexperienced swimmers.
Quanto mais você desce, mais fundo fica. Ó, aqui, ó. Até que aqui é de boa, mas só que é uma descida. Aqui.
You said what?
I said, it seemed like it kind of gets a little deep. You gotta watch where you step.
And all he was trying to do was educate the people, bro.
Yeah.
Onde ela se afogou, gente, é uma descida. Pra você ver aqui, ó. O tanto que eu passei aqui, daqui dá mais ou menos uns 2,5 metros. Ó, e quanto mais você anda, ó a diferença aqui já onde eu estou agora, ó. Então, pessoal, e ainda tem a correnteza. Aqui já, olha, ó, um passinho para frente, a água já está praticamente me cobrindo. Então, o risco aqui é muito grande,
However, nothing could have prepared him for what he was about to encounter just seconds later.
Ó a fundura aqui, ó. Ui. Eu acho que tinha um negócio aqui no fundo da água. Não, era mole. Será que não é ela, não?
While trying to demonstrate the river's deceptive drop-off, Linildo accidentally stepped on something lying on the riverbed. It was too soft and organic feeling to be a rock or a submerged log, which caught him off guard. The murky water made it impossible to see beneath the surface. But Linildo was starting to realize what it could be, leaving him too disturbed to go back and investigate further. He got out of the water and contacted authorities immediately. And it wasn't long before divers recovered the remains of Raíssa from that exact spot. Later autopsy report confirmed that there was no foul play involved. What happened to her was nothing more than a tragic accident.
Sad case, man. Rest in peace to her and condolences to her family. Tragic accident, just trying to enjoy life.
Have fun with friends.
And I just think that they didn't understand the river. 100%, you know.
Tragic accident. On September 25, 2025, the CBS 6 station in Albany, New York received a strange email with a 2-page document. It contained a nearly incomprehensible rant featuring Arnold Schwarzenegger, archaic centuries-old laws, and a proposal to create a board of trustees with prosecutorial immunity. However, the most important aspect of this document wasn't its content. Instead, the reason it stood out among the hundreds of emails the channel received every day was its author, 53-year-old Lawrence Krauss, who also included a selfie alongside the document. You see, Lawrence was currently under investigation for ending the lives of his own parents and getting away with it for over 8 years. It happened in August 2017. His 86-year-old father and 83-year-old mother were living out their retirement in their home in Crestwood Court in Albany, New York. And suddenly, they were gone without a trace. None of the neighbors saw them leaving or heard anything about where they were going. Their house was also left abandoned, with Lawrence only visiting it occasionally to collect mail, mow the lawn, and clear the snow. When asked about his parents, he claimed that they had moved back to Germany and won't be coming back. The neighbors had no reason to distrust Lawrence, so no one questioned their absence and life went on as usual. A distant relative even requested a welfare check in 2020, but the neighbors repeated the same explanation Lawrence had given, ending the officers' questioning without any further suspicion. It wasn't until mid-2025 that the Albany police became aware of something shady going on with the Krause family. Someone had been collecting Lawrence's parents' social security payments, even though the two hadn't been seen in years. This resulted in the police launching a formal investigation, and after months, finally executing a search warrant at the Krause home on September 23rd. Over the next 48 hours, detectives collected thousands of financial documents and other evidence. More importantly, they discovered the remains of Lawrence's parents buried in the backyard. Lawrence likely knew that he was the prime suspect in this case, but instead of turning himself in or trying to run away, he made the unusual decision of sending this document to the local news network alongside his contact information. One of the directors at CBS 6 was familiar with the Krause case and immediately jumped at the opportunity to interview Lawrence. After giving him a call, Lawrence claimed that he was willing to do a live interview with the channel only if they published his document on the internet for everyone to see. The network agreed, and less than an hour later, Lawrence was sitting with a CBS 6 reporter for a live interview. Lawrence was a bit hesitant at first, but after some pressure, he cracked and confessed to everything.
I want to hear from you.
Yeah.
What did you do to your parents?
I buried them in their property.
You buried them in the backyard of that house in Albany.
Right.
When it actually happened, when your parents died, did they know it was happening to them?
Oh, yeah.
And they knew it was at your hand?
Well, yes, no one else's.
Right. So they realized what you were doing to them as it happened.
Yes.
They knew that this was it for them, that they were perishing at your hand.
Yes. And it was so quick.
How did you do it?
Yeah, I can't talk about that.
Well, you've just told us that
Right.
it was at your hand.
Right.
Were there drugs involved? Was
No.
there a suffocation? You suffocated them? You suffocated your parents?
Yeah.
What made this confession so disturbing, however, was the way Lawrence tried to portray it as something righteous. His argument essentially boiled down to, my parents were suffering from old age, so I did them a favor. Even though the neighbors described the couple as elderly, they were by no means sick or bedridden. They had normal routines where they tended to their garden, shared mint leaves with neighbors' kids, and listened to Polish music every day. Their lives weren't nearly as miserable as Lawrence tried to portray during this interview. Now, it's unclear if he's severely mentally ill and genuinely believed everything he was saying, or if this interview was his way of trying to paint himself as the concerned son to earn the public's favor before his inevitable arrest. In either case, he had no way of escaping the consequences of his heartless actions. He was arrested immediately after walking out of the network's building and is currently awaiting trial for the death of his parents.
That's a sick ass individual
What you
right
said?
there.
Very.
And I think we both would just agree back then that we believe he mainly did it for the Social Security checks.
Yeah,
it was a financial means because they both was getting checks, and he didn't have a job. I don't think.
I don't think so. So he was just had been collecting their checks this entire 8 years? The entire 8 years.
On the night of October 28, 2023, the Utilita Arena in Sheffield, England was packed with over 8,000 spectators. They were there to watch the ice hockey match between the Nottingham Panthers and the Sheffield Steelers. The whole thing was also being broadcast live on TV for fans across the world, and the match started off completely normal. The first period ended without either team scoring a point. About 35 minutes later, the score was 4-2 in favor of the Sheffield Steelers. The Panthers needed to score soon if they wanted to make a comeback. So, one of their more renowned players, Adam Johnson, got a hold of the puck and started pushing into the Steelers' defensive zone. But before he could reach the goal, the match got interrupted by one of the most tragic incidents in ice hockey history. As Adam was making his way to the goal, a different player of his team bumped into Matt Petgrave of the Steelers. This resulted in Matt getting launched in the air and slicing Adam's neck with one of his skates. For those who don't know, professional hockey skates are sharpened to a razor's edge. so it took very little force to leave a deep laceration across Adam's neck, causing him to bleed profusely in front of both the live crowd and the TV audience. Medics at the arena tried to stop the bleeding, but the cut was too deep. He had already lost a lot of blood on the ice. Adam was then rushed to a nearby hospital. Unfortunately, despite going into surgery as quickly as possible, Adam couldn't survive the injury and passed away just hours later. Matt was arrested shortly after on suspicion that he had cut Adam on purpose. However, investigators found no foul play in Adam's death and ultimately ruled it a tragic accident. The only silver lining in this entire case is that it resulted in the English Ice Hockey Association making neck guards mandatory for all players, something that would have likely prevented this from happening altogether. But at the time, wearing this protective gear was only a suggestion.
I was wondering, I'm like,
do they normally do that? Like,
but what?
Cause he like kicked his leg up.
See
right?
that? Yes.
Like, is that
I don't
like
know hockey.
normal in ice hockey? Please
I don't
let me
know.
know, cause
I don't know hockey like that. I think in my whole life
like
watched
I've tuned in.
once or twice.
Yeah, but I'm not like familiar with like the rules of what you can and cannot do.
Cause like when I
normal.
first moved up here, it was real like
Yeah.
it was starting to gain its buzz here, and so that's when I was like, all right, cause they were like,
I've always wanted to go to like a...
They were like, oh, students get a discount. I think it was like Thursday nights whenever they had a game.
Yeah.
It was like discount night. I was like, man, I work. I ain't got time to go.
You.
But yeah, so I tuned in. But I
wouldn't think that would be normal because of the sharpness of the blades on their skates.
And the only other thing I know about hockey is Mighty Ducks.
Yeah.
The Mighty Ducks movie as a kid.
So just that alone with him saying like how it's sharpened, like I wouldn't think that would be normal.
Unless
so I wonder what like.
Unless it was like an unnatural move and he, cause you know how sometimes you do things. It's not how you naturally would respond, but it's like the physics of everything that might take your leg. And you like, oh, I wasn't even trying to do that. I don't know what happened, but I wasn't deliberately trying to do that. You get what I'm saying? Cause I've seen like hooping, like when I was younger when hoop. I've seen things happen that's not natural movement, but like, I remember I ran out the ball one time before and like literally I went to pick up the ball and I did a whole front flip. I picked up the ball, did a whole front flip. I was like, what the fuck? And it wasn't natural, but I literally flipped over the ball because I was running so fast when I went. It's just the searching of everything flipped. So I don't know. It could have been one of those situations where it's not a natural thing, but just due to, I guess, physics and how the movement of the body, the response to everything. But they said no foul play. Well,
rest in peace to Adam.
Yeah. Unfortunately, it did put awareness because I would never have thought about that either. But I do think that is something that they should have, been doing.
Yeah.
On the evening of September 2, 2011, TVN, one of the biggest networks in Chile, was airing the latest episode of a show called Calle 7. It was a live game show where teams competed in various challenges to make their way to the top, and this weekend's episode was supposed to be no different. But things took a disturbing turn about halfway through the episode when the show's host interrupted the competitors seemingly out of nowhere and told them to stop.
Quiero que paren la competencia, por favor. Nos acaba de llegar una información muy difícil de entregar. No habíamos querido decir nada antes de chequear bien lo que estaba sucediendo porque compromete a personajes del canal, a personas muy queridas, a un equipo del canal, entre ellos Felipe Camiroaga y Roberto Bruce, que también estaba en aquel vuelo a la isla de Juan Fernández, según tengo entendido. Es información que nos está llegando en este momento. El Ministerio de Defensa informó esta tarde el presidente de la República que un equipo de TVN iba al borde de una nave de la Fuerza Aérea de Chile que capotó en el archipiélago de Juan Fernández.
However, the reason for this interruption had nothing to do with the show itself. The host was talking about the C-212 Chilean Air Force plane that departed from the Arturo Merino Benitez International Airport earlier that day at around 2 p.m. It was headed for the Robinson Crusoe Airport, located hundreds of miles off the coast of Chile. Aboard was a full TV crew from the network, including the two renowned presenters, Felipe Camiroaga and Roberto Bruce. They were visiting Robinson Crusoe Island to report on the reconstruction after the 2010 earthquake. The flight started without a hitch. Unfortunately, as they were approaching the runway, the wind became extremely strong, making it impossible to land. The pilot tried to land a couple of times, circling in the air after each attempt. However, on the third attempt, witnesses saw the plane lose altitude much faster than expected and crash into the ocean just a mile from the island. By the time rescuers reached the crash site, it was already too late. All 21 people aboard the C-212 plane had passed away. But while investigators initially believed that all of those deaths were due to the impact of the crash, the reality turned out to be far darker. As they were searching the wreckage, they found footage that one of the cameramen took of the interior shortly before the crash. The footage showed the passengers strapped into their seats, completely unaware of their fate. But the more haunting discovery happened when investigators found an SD card inside an empty water bottle floating near the crash site. This card contained hundreds of images. However, analysis of these images showed that 2 of them were taken after the crash, including one of the plane's windows covered in water. These images put the crash into a whole new perspective. They showed that several passengers, including the cameraman who took these photos and preserved the SD card in the bottle, likely survived the initial crash. Sadly, they were trapped inside a rapidly sinking plane with no way out, forced to watch their aircraft fill up with water until there was no air left to breathe.
I do kind of remember that one from another previous video. But we do so much that I vaguely remember it. So my apologies on that. But RIP to all 21.
21. Yeah.
That's tragic, bro.
Facts.
Niagara Falls is widely regarded as one of the world's most breathtaking natural wonders. However, while the surface is undeniably beautiful, the depths beneath the falls hide the disturbing history of many who lost their lives to the currents. One such incident was captured live on TV on May 30, 1985, when reporter Phil Kavitz was hosting a section about real estate in front of the falls. Suddenly, in the background, the camera captured a man caught in the current behind Phil. The rushing water carried him to the edge of the falls before throwing him over the 170-foot drop. And while a lucky few have survived the fall from the Niagara Falls, he wasn't one of them. The treacherous terrain under the falls also made it difficult to retrieve his remains. Once recovered, investigators identified the man as 56-year-old Robert Ahrens and concluded that the act was deliberate. However, Robert was only one of the 5,000 bodies that have been recovered from the foot of the falls in the last 175 years. Many of these 5,000 deaths were intentional, but there were a lot that weren't. And unfortunately, surviving a fall from Niagara Falls is near impossible. Once you fall in, the cold water makes it extremely difficult to breathe, making it even more challenging to swim to the surface. The water near the edge can also move at over 60 miles per hour, adding another layer of difficulty to an already impossible challenge. But the jagged rocks at the base of the falls is what marks the end for most people.
I didn't know that bottom was like that. Did you?
But no.
I'm saying like the bottom of the water. I didn't. Oh wow, that's a horrible way. Ooh.
On the 23rd of August 2010 at around 10 a.m., 21 tourists from Hong Kong returned to their tour bus after visiting the historic Fort Santiago in Manila, Philippines. They were also accompanied by 3 Filipino tour guides, and the trip had been going fantastic so far. But just as they were about to set out to the next location, they got interrupted by a middle-aged man in a police uniform. He was openly carrying multiple firearms, and his demeanor made it clear he wasn't afraid to use them either, something that became even more apparent as time went on. For now, things started off fairly calm, with him asking the driver for a ride to the next station. The bus driver tried to reject the request respectfully, explaining that he couldn't let him on because it was a private vehicle, not a public bus. However, the man wasn't having any of it. As soon as the bus driver rejected his request, he equipped one of his firearms and claimed that he was taking the bus hostage. This was 55-year-old Rolando Mendoza, a police officer with nearly 30 years of service. But he'd recently been fired over drug charges that Rolando claimed were untrue. Getting fired left him with no pension after 3 decades of hard work. And while he tried to fight for his job through official means, his superiors wouldn't listen. In an act of desperation and defiance, Rolando took this bus full of tourists hostage and presented a single demand. He wanted his job back. The situation so far looked fairly manageable, with 2 of his former colleagues establishing communications without any pushback. They were even able to convince him to release a few of the hostages. Granting his relatively simple demand would have been easy, but what followed was one of the biggest hostage disasters in the country's history, all because those in charge couldn't agree on the next move. Things started going downhill when Rolando's brother tried to approach the bus and was immediately detained by the officers. This made the already furious Rolando even angrier and more unstable. The situation only got worse once the media got involved. Nearly every news channel in the country started broadcasting the situation live. They talked about everything, including the plans officials were making outside. What they didn't know, however, was that the bus had a working TV and Rolando was watching and listening in on everything. This could have helped him formulate a plan and get what he wanted without hurting anyone. Unfortunately, the lackluster response from the officials made a peaceful resolution near impossible. His anger reached a boiling point when he saw how his brother was being treated by the police on live TV. This resulted in Rolando getting blinded by rage and opening fire on the hostages. Around the same time, the bus driver managed to free himself from the handcuffs Rolando put him in and escape through the driver's side door. Unfortunately, while he was able to remain unharmed, other hostages weren't as lucky. Since, according to the bus driver, they were all dead, leaving Rolando alone in the bus. This revelation gave authorities the go-ahead to surround the bus and try to break in without any more casualties. But Rolando wasn't willing to go down without a fight. As soon as they tried to enter through the emergency exit, Rolando opened fire, hitting one officer on his bulletproof helmet and barely missing the others. So the officers thought of a different strategy. They flooded the back of the bus with tear gas, forcing him to the front, right into the crosshairs of a sniper, finally ending the hostage crisis. It wasn't until after his death that police realized the bus driver had misunderstood the situation and that 9 of the hostages were still alive. The massive loss of innocent lives broadcast live for the world to see, coupled with officials making wrong decisions at every turn, drew intense global scrutiny, marking this as one of the worst and most tragic incidents in Filipino history.
Wow.
So how many casualties were there? He didn't say.
He didn't say. Because we don't even know how many people's on the bus to start with.
But you can still say how many casualties there were.
Yeah, I get what you're saying. I'm just saying, I'm wondering, was there any since they rescued? Now I'm just like wondering, was it just those?
Well, they rescued 9 then, but some of them even got
off before then.
Yeah.
Don't worry about it. I don't know.
I wondered, like, how many bodies were retrieved outside of his? Was it?
Yeah.
5, 4, 2.
Yeah,
you know? But R.I.P. to man.
Facts.
I wonder why the bus driver even said there was no.
I have no clue.
Or you ain't care. You just like
I'm free. No.
9's on them by themselves. That's
a scary situation.
What you said, man. But hey, man, y'all spam us up. Y'all let us know y'all thoughts about this in the comment section for us down below, man. But until next time, y'all know how it go, man. I do go by the name DJ New Kid. This is
Sierra Nicole.
We are.
Kid and C.
We are.
Ain't no time to kick it, got a stack of flip for my foes. Dollar, dollar, dollar.